Hello, everyone, and welcome to our CXO Roundtable presented by Plug and Play Detroit. My name is Adam Jansen. I am the director of Plug and Play Detroit, and I'm joined here this morning by my colleague, Simon Marr, who is going to be discussing the new COVID-19 or End COVID-19 initiative, go over some housekeeping, and he'll also be the moderator of our Q&A with the panel. So we have a great event in store for you. The agenda you basically see here. So I'm going to take a minute to kind of go through some introductory remarks. As I said a moment ago, Simon will go through some brief housekeeping. We'll really spend the bulk of our time on the panel discussion though. And we're really excited because we have John Absmeyer, the CTO of Lear, as well as Hakan Yilmaz, the CTO of BorgWarner, joining us here today. And of course, we'll be moderated by our very own founder and CEO, Saeed Amidi. From there, we'll have a live Q&A, basically from you guys, the audience, and we'll have about 15 minutes or so to answer any questions that you guys might have about Lear, BorgWarner, where they see the industry headed, how different corporations are reacting to COVID-19. Basically anything that you think would be something that would be helpful for you, I believe would probably be helpful for a number of other corporations as well. So please feel free to ask those questions. Finally, I will come back for about a 5-minute or so wrap up where I'll just kind of touch base on any upcoming events. So let's just jump right in. As many of you know, we are the world's largest open innovation platform. And we have quite a few different stakeholders. You see a number of them on the screen here, but I really want to highlight our corporate partners as well as our startups. And so our platform has kind of continued to grow over the past several years, and we're now up to about 400 or so corporate partners, actually just over 400 partners. And you see some of the brand names here, and they really are some of the most successful companies in the world and some of the biggest brands. And when we're talking to these corporate partners, what I've been hearing a lot lately is it's continued to be really important to innovate. And actually, it's more important now to innovate than ever, just because, of course, the most innovative companies will come out even stronger. And we really task ourselves with connecting these really successful large corporations together with some of the smaller, very, very innovative startups to kind of solve their most pressing business needs. And so we have thousands of startups in our network. We have thousands of those startups. We made over 200 investments last year. We're very active investors, one of the most active in Silicon Valley. This slide really just covers a few of our success stories. So as you see here, we're early investors in Dropbox and PayPal, Lending Club, and a number of others. So see, these are some of our exits. And I want to take a second to talk about one of our verticals in particular. So Plug and Play Mobility, we founded back in 2014 as part of the Internet of Things, or IoT vertical. It spun out after it saw quite a bit of traction in 2016 into its very own vertical. It's headquartered, of course, in Silicon Valley. We make over 25 investments per year in the mobility vertical. We have accelerated nearly 400 startups. Silicon Valley is currently on its 8th startup batch, and we have over 60 corporate partners worldwide. You see some of the focus areas down at the bottom left there. Autonomous connectivity, shared economy, or electrification. Those probably will look very familiar to you if you follow the automotive industry. They're very commonly referred to as ACEs or CASE, but you can kind of see some of the areas that we're looking into beneath each of those groupings. So, we knew that mobility is very important, and we've kind of expanded it all over the world. You see a couple of our locations there in Europe, and Stuttgart in particular has been a very successful one. And we have locations all across Asia as well. But when you look at this and you think about the automotive industry, you really know that something is missing. And so we decided to do something about that. So in January of this year, you may have seen a press release that we put out together with Fiat Chrysler, or FCA, as well as Michigan Minority Supplier Development Council, MMSDC, basically saying that finally Plug and Play is coming to Detroit. And so Detroit, of course, is really well known for mobility and for the automotive industry, but we know that it's so much more than that. And so Detroit, on the next slide, we see Detroit is turning into the next major technology hub in the United States, and that's something we really believe in. And you know, we want to make sure that we're serving more industries than just the traditional automotive OEM tier one supplier space. And so when we go to Detroit, you know, we're really looking for this mobility in automotive space. You know, we're looking for, you know, these financial services, corporate and professional services, digital technology, you know, a wide range of different manufacturing, energy, for example. Music is huge in Detroit. And so we want to make sure that we're able to help different corporations as well as the startups to connect with them in all of these different spaces within Detroit. But of course, you know, we're a little bit limited for time today, so I'd love to continue this conversation with anybody afterwards. Please feel free to reach out to me. And in the meantime, I'd love to introduce my colleague who can talk about a new initiative that we have.
Hey, Adam, it looks like I'm blue this morning. I'll see if I can figure that out.
Okay.
Oh dear. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here with you. One of the things that we're really excited about that was launched in the aftermath, of course, of the coronavirus is our social impacts and COVID-19 program. And this is something that we've invested $2 million in to subsidize, but essentially it's a fast track to impact program. So what it means is that for all of our corporate partners, and if you're not yet a corporate partner, what this is helping corporations from end to end scale technologies and integrate them quickly. So from the point of view of trying to identify what those problem statements are, those innovation opportunities are, sourcing the best startups, running POCs and getting to implementation, we're working with a number of corporate partners to do that quickly with implementations for like June and September. So if that's something that you're interested in, please reach out to us and we'd be glad to tell you all about that. Now, before we hop into the proceedings today, let me just do a brief housekeeping. So we are going to have a Q&A. So in the center of your screen down the bottom is a little Q&A box. And so what we'd love is that as the roundtable is going on, if you've got questions for our speakers, please use that Q&A box to ask those questions and we'll be fielding those and I'll be hosting the Q&A session at the end. But without further ado, let me introduce our speakers who hopefully will not be blue when they enter the conversation today. So first off, Syed Amidi is our CEO and founder of Plug and Play Tech Center. He's a serial entrepreneur and a seasoned executive with nearly 30 years of experience founding, operating, and growing successful companies. Syed has been investing in technology companies for about 15 years with exits such as PayPal, Dropbox, Lending Club, and most recently Honey. He's a global thought leader and champion of open innovation with a real passion for inspiring and helping entrepreneurs and corporations succeed. And one of the things I've appreciated so much on these fireside chats and roundtables that we've been running is his curiosity and thirst for learning. And he'll be moderating our roundtable. Thanks for being here, Syed. It's great to have you. All right, so our next speaker will be John Apsmeyer. He's an automotive technology and automation and innovation leader, serving as the Chief Technology Officer of Lear Corporation, which is a Fortune 500 global automotive seating and electrical systems manufacturer based in Michigan. He leads all aspects of the company's technology and innovation efforts, and previously led the Advanced Driver Assistance Systems Business Unit and as SVP and General Manager at Harman International. And before that, VP of Smart Machines at Samsung Electronics, and was the founder and Managing Director of Delphi Labs in Silicon Valley. Great to be here. John, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Simon.
And then finally, hey mate. Thanks. And finally, Hakan Yilmaz is an advanced automotive engineering and business strategy leader and serves as the Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at BorgWarner, which is a Michigan-based Fortune 500 global product leader in clean and efficient technology solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles. He serves as the company's advanced engineering, portfolio strategy, and market research teams, And prior to that, had a 15-year career at Robert Bosch, where he held various positions, ultimately as the Vice President and Global Head of Powertrain Systems and Advanced Engineering. Thanks for being with us today, Hakan.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Fantastic. So we'll pull up all of the videos for our speakers, and I'm going to hand over to Saeed to start the roundtable. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to the people on East Coast, and good evening to our colleagues in Europe. You know, it is great to be here and having this open dialogue and discussion. I remember my first fireside chat was with the chairman of BESCO from Germany, a little bit outside of Munich, Matthias. And unfortunately, they had, I believe, 14 positive cases in Germany in February, which was quite unusual. You know, he had to shut down the company for 2 weeks. Almost he went through the challenge we are going through 2 to 3 months in advance of everybody. But quite frankly, he kept a positive attitude as a leader, and the factory workers and the office workers all came back after 2 weeks and started production. So Hakan, I wanted to ask you if you could first tell us a little bit about BorgWarner, little bit about yourself, and then when was like Matthias, as I said, his was in middle of February, that his life and his company challenge started.
Mm-hmm.
When was it that you realized this is going to be it?
I think we lost him.
And a little bit possible. Hello?
Hey, Said, I think we lost you for a sec.
Okay, but go ahead, please. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
And a little bit about the company. And then when did this COVID-19 challenge started for you?
Okay, sure. So first of all, thank you for the invitation. Once again, it's great to be partners with you in Innovation Framework. I've been with BorgWarner for about 2.5 years now. I joined beginning of 2018 as the Chief Technology Officer. I'm overseeing the corporate advanced engineering portfolio strategy of the company, as well as market research, and also our Cascadia Motion team in Portland, doing all our electric drive units for e-mobility companies. About BorgWarner, BorgWarner is a propulsion system leader in our domain. Basically, we have a very clear focus in our strategy that's balancing our portfolio with combustion, hybrid, and electric products. In our deep roots, BorgWarner has a lot of heritage in mechanical products, turbochargers, DCT, dual clutch system, clutching, chains, and transfer cases, all-wheel drive coupling. So we are a really mechanically driven company historically. The last several years, of course, like rest of the industry, we started a massive transformation. I wouldn't really call it maybe transformation, more like an evolution. Adding new pillars to our technology, adding capabilities in hybrid vehicles with all the electrification going on based on combustion vehicles, and then also adding electric propulsion capabilities. So as the market, the automotive propulsion market, is not really a digital switch from combustion to electric vehicle, it's going through an evolution with hybridization and electrification in parallel. As a tier one supplier, we're basically following that trend and adapting our portfolio organically and inorganically, right? We're keeping that balance. there are certain things we can do in-house in a good way and certain things we cannot, so we go outside for inorganic acquisition. So a couple of highlights. Since I joined BorgWarner, I observed a couple of success stories. For example, our hybrid and electric drive unit modules with our electrical machines, clutching or gearing that goes into hybrid vehicles or better electric vehicles. And we're one of the few companies who can do it all in-house, bringing mechanical pieces, the electrical drive and electronics all together under one housing. We are also quite active in electrifying our turbochargers, our core business. So we're trying to shuffle a lot of things and balance our portfolio. And in parallel, we also saw some inorganic activities, right? We built a joint venture with Romeo Power out of Los Angeles on battery packs. That's our entry point into battery packs. We acquired 2 small companies in Portland, specialized in electrical drive units and power electronics in Portland, doing these systems for mainly e-mobility companies and startups. We acquired them and merged them together and built a company called Cascadia Motion, running under the BorgWarner umbrella right now. And in 2019, in 1 year, they served about 260 companies with our electric drive unit and power electronic solutions. That gives us a tremendous exposure and reach out to the e-mobility world with our electric drive systems. In addition to all of that, of course, we said, you know what, we need to make a bold move, next move to prepare the company for the future. So we started our acquisition of Delphi Technologies beginning of this year, announced end of January, and we are targeting to close in the second half of this year. And with Delphi Technologies, we're hoping to have a very comprehensive propulsion system portfolio for combustion, hybrid, and electric. Well, in the middle of this whole, adventure, in January, February timeframe, we announced our deal, and a couple of weeks later, of course, we got hit by the COVID like everybody else. Right? Came unexpected. It gave some signs because we were very active in China. We got the signs from our teams in China. We actually have a plant in Wuhan. We shut down immediately, right? Or the government shut down immediately. But out of our 10 plants in China, other than the Wuhan plant, pretty much all the others were active the whole time. Over the Chinese New Year, there was a nationwide kind of lockdown a bit, but after that, they all came back alive. And right now, our operations in China are pretty much back to normal and even overshooting in some areas. So it's tremendous V-type recovery.
Fantastic. That is great news. We'll come back to you about the sort of the February or March, the aha moment. But let me ask John to, I heard this morning that you have had a career at Delphi before Lear. I love that you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Lear, your company, and your journey in innovation and technology.
Sure. Thanks, Said. So yeah, I started my career at Delphi back in the mid-90s and worked on electric vehicles, actually. If you remember the EV1, Who Killed the Electric Car? That was some of the first work that I got to do as a young engineer. I was fortunate because I've worked on all the trends that are now finally coming to reality with autonomy, connectivity, electrification, and shared mobility. So I've now sort of parlayed that into a technology leadership position, of course, at Lear, where I'm the Chief Technology Officer. And Lear is a global leader in seating and electronics. We have somewhere around 250 locations globally, 160,000 employees, and on an innovation journey and a digital transformation journey for sure. We see in both seating and electronics that even with the COVID-19 situation, there's many opportunities that are evolving in the trend areas, but also in society that make things like hygiene and contactless transactions and even more user experience becomes more important. And the way we started that journey is as a seating supplier, and the seat is the cradle of the user experience in the car. It's the most contact that you have in the car, and that grows out into the electrical architecture and the user interface and the user experience in the car. And that's where we've seen the growth. About $20 billion in annual revenue, the majority of that from seating, but about 5 of that in electronics and electrical systems. And so to your question about the journey, I've watched electrification, connectivity, and autonomy over the last 25 years roughly, have fits and starts, if you will. Electrification, this is sort of the 4th time that I'm watching the market play out for electrification. Connectivity has been an evolving system since the 90s, and autonomy has been discussed in the industry for a few decades as well. So all these things now are sort of in the forefront, and where the entrepreneur ecosystem and plug and play is participating. So I appreciate that very much, and also want to say thank you for partnering with us. As to when the COVID situation affected us, similar to Hakan, we have a lot of operations in China and globally, but during the Chinese New Year, the shutdown continued to be extended, and that's really when the effects started to happen, both with ourselves and, of course, the market. So we've been dealing with it for the majority of 2020. I'm happy to say that similarly, China is now more or less back online, and things are coming back to usual. Europe is now coming online in full force, somewhere a third to halfway there, and ramping up. Dependent on some of the regional and local restrictions on work and stay-at-home orders. So we're of course following all the regulations. And US, we have a couple of plants up and running in the south, but Michigan is now coming back online. This week we're conducting things like open houses and training sessions for all of our employees that are in the plants, as well as our engineering and administrative offices. And we'll be starting back up next week on the 18th.
John, can
you hear me?
I'm not sure if everybody lost John, or did I just lose John?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay. Perfect.
Sorry. So basically, US is coming back on next week, starting on the 18th for our Michigan facilities. But I think the number one priority, both in our work and in our lives, is making sure that our people are safe and protected, and that they feel that way coming back to work. So in any case, thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much, John. Maybe I ask this question from both of you because quite frankly, it has not been for me, I would say, in the last 20 years that I have not traveled now for 75 days. I can't believe it. My last travel was in Topeka and in Fargo. I went to Topeka and Fargo, where we are actually launching our agricultural tech innovation platform. But did you ever imagine we will be working like this? And quite frankly, I feel now people believe in technology and innovation in how we work, what we do, more than ever before. But maybe we'll start with you, Hakan. What do you think about, when did it happen to you that you suddenly woke up and you saw you have to work from home? And how do you think this will affect us when we all go back to our offices and lab?
I'd like to use analogies with these questions. First of all, how it hit us. It feels like an earthquake happened in China and a tsunami hit us weeks later. And things are almost back to normal, the new normal back in China, with very little cases and people back to work. And here we're still underwater trying to get out of the tsunami effect. And we saw the indications, but we were all optimistic that it would not really come to this, because we never experienced anything like this before. On the other hand, we were not naive, right? In a situation like this, you need to hope for the best, prepare for the best, keep your activities going, be cautious, but also prepare your company for potential lockdown because it started accumulating the stress level. And all of a sudden, right, in Michigan, the cases started increasing mid of March. And the governor basically ordered the stay home or shelter in place about 2 months ago. So because the cases were really increasing in Michigan, maybe because of the industry, or we don't know why, it started increasing exponentially compared to other Midwest states. So all of a sudden we found ourselves in our home offices. I had half a day to prepare our technical center here, where we have about 600 engineers and a lot of labs and prototyping labs. We had half a day notice to have a controlled shutdown of all the labs. And then the next day we started our home office. We did not have enough VPN access, so we increased our VPN access and started using all tools that are available to us from our IT systems. You know, another analogy, it feels like we were driving on a nice highway at a high speed, life as usual, and all of a sudden we got hit by a massive snowstorm. We had to pull aside and take shelter under a bridge and waiting for the snowstorm, the massive snowstorm, the peak to go away. But in a situation like this, what happens, even if the storm is gone, right? You have this much snow on the highway until the trucks come and clean it. You can get back if you can, but you need to be very slow, very cautious, and you have to wait until you feel safe to accelerate again. And this is the situation, right? Yesterday, our governor started letting manufacturing, automotive manufacturing restart. And we came in and started our operations at a 10%, about 60 of our employees are back as of today. We started our key prototyping labs and testing facilities so that we can support our OEM customers to continue their manufacturing. But it was almost surreal. And everybody's cautious. You're taking all the measures for safety of our employees. Things that you would see on social media, all the precautions that are being taken in Asia. Now we're doing it here in our home base. I was wearing a mask all day yesterday, keeping social distance with our employees, going around the labs. I think we will get through this, but we have to do it in a very smart way. You know, we adapt, but we have to really adapt to this situation in a very smart way.
Wonderful. I love your analogy examples. I'm going to use the earthquake with the tsunami coming, and I am still under the bridge. I hope we will be able to go back to work partially in June 1st. John, how about you? I know that you commuted quite a bit between California and Detroit and the rest of the world. When did it really hit you?
Yeah, well, first, I'm happy to say the snow on the highway analogy doesn't work in Silicon Valley, thankfully. But the tsunami one might. Yeah, the running joke with my wife and I is that this is the most consecutive nights that I've been in our home in the last 15 years.
And still married,
Yes, happily, thankfully, happily. But I guess for me, you know, this whole work from home situation, frankly, it's not a big upset for me. And the reason I say that is because I travel a ton, right? I commute more or less between Silicon Valley and Detroit and the Seattle area. And then occasionally I'm, you know, overseas in Europe or in Asia. But I'm more or less on the road, you know, 75 to 90% of the time running around Detroit, Silicon Valley, and Seattle. So in any case, I'm always interacting with people remotely somewhere, whether it's overseas or in another state. So for me, really what it comes down to is watching the cultural shift that's happened, or that I think is happening, because most large and especially older large industrial companies are not used to working remotely and are not used to having to interact either just by voice or through a video conference. And so there's a real cultural issue with that, in that if I don't see your face or look in your eyes or hear your voice, you know, the whole working day, you must not be working. And I think that's a shift that's people have had to you know, change their perspective on, because in reality, during this time, we're working harder than ever. We all have our normal day jobs, but we also have this crisis to deal with, which of course is front and center. But I think that's the biggest change for me, is watching how everybody else has started to come around to the idea of interacting remotely, and that's a positive for me. It's not a huge change in my lifestyle, though.
Wonderful. Let me little bit shift. Because the auto industry, especially electrification, autonomous, I mean, quite frankly, it was like incredible challenges. I remember I was at the auto show in Frankfurt, and there was more Chinese cars exhibiting there almost than German cars, for sure, by the number of manufacturers. But still, from historical perspective, Mercedes still had a building, and Volkswagen had another building. But the world was changing so fast. Uber was worth $50 billion. And they, again, also, I believe in Las Vegas, I saw Uber making a car with one of the auto companies, sort of like in a joint venture. They even were making a helicopter that they were going to distribute. What happens now with this shared economy, autonomous car, exactly? Maybe John, you can go first this time.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I think that, depending on the, let's say, depth and time frame for recovery from in the economy, we'll see various changes. Certainly some industry consolidation. Hakan talked about some a minute ago with BorgWarner and Delphi. I think there'll be more of that happening, even at the small scale with startups and medium-sized companies, but also large scale. The longer this goes, the more we'll likely see, because in particular, the mobility and the automotive industry are capital-intensive businesses, and liquidity is a challenge when you're not generating revenue. So that's on sort of general industry. If you look at the trends, autonomy, connectivity, electrification, and shared mobility, autonomy, we've been hearing for the last 12 months, I'd say a little bit of stepping back from some commitments on the high levels of autonomy, level 4 and level 5. And the reason is because it's hard. It's extremely hard. And all of the technical challenges are not solved yet with respect to sensors, with respect to computing, and even regulatory and liability issues. So I think, we're definitely seeing somewhat of a retrenching down towards level 3 and below, which is okay, because at the end of the day, it's a safety technology, and it will continue to improve the safety of driving and reduce fatalities. With respect to connectivity, the industry's been moving towards ubiquitous connectivity in cars for the last decade roughly, and we're getting closer and closer, especially in the larger developed nations. But connectivity offers a chance to create new value for OEMs. In my opening, I talked a little bit about contactless transactions. That's something that we do with our Zevo division, which we won a PACE award for just last week, I think it was. For that marketplace innovation, which enables you to buy gas, park, buy quick service food, buy coffee, groceries, etc., from your dashboard without having to swipe a credit card, without having to even potentially go in a facility. And those types of technologies are definitely enabled by connectivity and becoming more important for the industry. So digital transformation and bringing the car and the user experience from just the embedded system in the car into the cloud, and being able to enable that across an individual's ecosystem, I think is going to go full force, especially now. With respect to electrification, I said that this is like the fourth cycle that I've seen of electrification. We have crossed the tipping point for sure. I think there's a number of trends with electrification that are driving it. China is full speed ahead for sure, for various reasons, but they continue to have stimulus and subsidy to help promote that industry, and it's going. Europe, CO2 regulations and emissions rules that are coming are pushing that. Consumers, I think globally want greener energy, especially after this quarantine or lockdown timeframe. People are seeing clean air in some cities, much cleaner than they have in a long time. So, my hope is electrification finally really goes. It'll be a matter of consumer adoption in the near term. And then finally, with shared mobility, it's a little bit, there's a couple of arguments with shared mobility. One, being that people aren't going to want to use shared vehicles because it's not their personal space and they can't control the cleanliness or the hygiene. But on the flip side, if you were used to riding in a bus or on a metro or a subway, it's likely a better scenario to do a ride hailing or a ride sharing. So, in addition to that, car sales in certain places are seeing an uptick because people want their own individual space. But I think in general, people are potentially pushing up the stack a little bit, if you will, in terms of wanting to have at least better than they had before. And so also another important focus for us is on hygiene in the car. The seat again is a very used surface in the vehicle. It's the part you're exposed to physically for the longest time. So we see there's opportunity for that coming out of this as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, John, I just had last week a fireside chat with Fabian Zingler, who is the Shell country manager for Germany. And we talked about the gas station of future and touchless experience, as well as clean energy. I mean, as a large company, they have committed $2 billion a year to move into clean energy. But maybe I can ask from you, Hakan, the same question. How do you, quite frankly, Dara, the CEO of Uber, was having a great time in Vegas. I remember when I met Ola from Mercedes, he told me, Said, why don't you wait a couple of minutes? My next meeting is with Dara. And honest to God, you didn't know who is more powerful, the CEO of Mercedes or Dara. He was like not walking, he was sort of flying, I would say, in CES in Las Vegas. What happens now? I mean, he lost $3 billion, like $1 billion a month this year. Please, Hakan. I know that's a long question, but...
Yeah. Well, can you hear me clear?
Yes.
Yeah, you're losing your side. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'll get started then. So, when you're in a crisis situation, this is something like we have experienced before. It's new. Now, in a crisis, you follow certain steps. First of all, in a crisis, what you need to do first is, can you survive this crisis? You need to prepare for the worst. You need to make sure you have the liquidity, right? As John said, you need to make sure that you have enough liquidity and you can go through this tough storm. Do you have enough gas in your tank to survive the snowstorm, right? So that's the first thing you do, safety and looking at your measures for surviving that storm. The second thing, we prepare for two things, right? In addition to preparing for the worst case scenario for our liquidity, we prepare our operations for the best case scenario, because that's where the challenge is. Restarting our manufacturing, restarting our employees, keep them motivated, keep them engaged, restarting our supply base. We are global players. Our customers, manufacturers, automotive manufacturers are global players. So the priority number one is safety and survival. Number two, going back to our operation, because we had great business. We still have great business before the crisis. We want to continue with that. Once you secure those two, these are your tactical measures. Once your tactical measures, safety, security, and survival, and back to your operations is out of the way and you feel safe, then you start thinking about your strategic moves. You look at, okay, what is my competitive situation? Typically, history tells us after crisis, bunch of folks fail. Some of them come out with a lot of bruises. It takes them a while to recover. And some of them come out like nothing happened, and they get into action and they widen the gap in their competitiveness against their competition. So you hope to be the last one, right? You want to survive this. You want to come out with liquidity. You want to come out with maximum operations, business as usual. And then you also want to look at your opportunities to increase your gap with your competition. If you're in a lead position, or if you're behind, use it as an opportunity to catch up. Now, when we talk about electrification, right, that's our primary focus right now. So combustion, hybrid, electric, we're keeping the balance. And this is a journey, as we said at the beginning. And I think the journey will continue and should continue. Because if there's one thing that this crisis proved to us is the data that we have right now, massive amounts of data in all of the countries, regions, states, even the ozone layers. The environment is recovering, right? So this emphasizes how important it is to have clean and efficient solutions. And this is our focus at BorgWarner. We're trying to differentiate with clean and efficient solutions. If it is combustion products, we focus on clean and efficient. If it is hybridization, we focus on clean and efficient. If it is electric, we focus on clean and efficient. And I think this crisis, COVID really proved to us, gave us a lot of data to see clearly that we have to keep that journey. We have to keep investing in new mobility solutions. We have to keep investing in electrification solutions. And we have to keep that journey. We cannot just use this as an excuse, like the snowstorm, and say, oh, we're giving up, we're gonna go back home. No, we're gonna get back on the road, we're gonna get going. And when I look at the policymakers, as John said, in China, we don't see any setback. In Europe, the CO2 targets, the carbon dioxide targets are still there. And the OEM, our customers, are announcing that they're not stepping back from electrification. So I hope that the industry overall, it's an ecosystem, right? We're not alone. I hope our OEM customers, startups, the new mobility customers, which are really crucial for transforming e-mobility, and suppliers, our competitors, peers, ourselves. I hope we come out of this crisis with minimum bruises and can get back on track, because we're on a great journey towards electrification, and we're going to continue.
Fantastic. I like you put you on CNN because I like your positive outlook. You know, like
we have to be positive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. It is really fantastic to hear you both. You know, it is challenging time. It is hard to go back to the new norm, but we will all get through this. And, you know, as two of the greatest tier one suppliers in the industry, really it's refreshing and exciting for me to hear you talk so optimistic. And going back to shared car, and, you know, as I said, I know at one time Uber was worth $50 billion. And I do agree with you, John, that some people who used to sit in buses and subways, now if they can afford it, they will take Uber. But do you guys, I mean, like, feel that trend may slow down a little bit and people may buy more cars? Like, I remember when I was 16 and a half, pretty spoiled kid, but I dreamed about buying my first car. But my kids don't dream that way. It's not a status thing to buy a car. It's actually some people look down on you when you buy a sports car these days. But do you think that that trend, John, may come back, that people strive to own their first car?
Well, there are some indications of that in China, for example, that car sales, might get an uptick because people want to have their own private space, their own, control their own cleanliness, etc. I think it's too early to know, Saeed, but what I can say is I hope so. I hope that's the case. I'm a total gearhead. I love cars, and I would hate to see their demise, but I think it's a little bit early to know for sure.
And Hakan, what is your thought? And then we will go to some of the questions people have had.
I think, Said, right now there's a lot of emotions. We're deciding based on emotions. And as long as we're in a lockdown, as long as we don't experience the new normal, it's hard to predict. Because this is a health pandemic. This is not a 2008-9 crisis, not a financial crisis. This is a health pandemic, right? People are going through health problems, going through a whole different situation. Schools are closed. We have employees and friends stuck at home with their kids, and same with ourselves. We're right now going through unprecedented experiences, and there's a lot of emotions. When it comes to business, when it comes to making investments, when it comes to buying a car, it is a big investment. I think as we come out of this lockdown, as we get used to the new normal, be smart and learn about it, adapt to it, I think people will come back to more pragmatic decisions. It will take some time, but I'm hopeful that we're going to have a U-type recovery in most areas. China jumped back with a V-type. I think in our cases, we're going to have some repair, we're going to have some adjustment for a few months, maybe until end of this year. But I think the e-mobility, our trends, shared and autonomous driving, electrified vehicles, we're going to get back on track once we experience the new normal, get used to it, be smart about it, embrace it, and move on. This is what we do. As human beings, we adapt and move on. So I think the pessimism around e-mobility right now is very temporary and it's very emotional, and we're going to move on pretty quickly. That's what I believe in.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's great. Simon, maybe we can go to some of the questions.
Fantastic, and great conversation, guys. Thankfully, I'm not blue this time. We've actually had a number of yeah, me too. We've had a number of really good questions around how are companies transitioning and making that, going along the digital transformation journey. You hear the language around architectural innovation. So maybe we could ask, how are you upskilling the workforces? What capabilities within your companies are top of mind for building in order to facilitate that transition, whether it's new materials or electrification or autonomous driving, etc. Maybe we can go to John first.
Sure. So I guess maybe to talk a little bit about the innovation journey, because I don't think it's started as a result of COVID-19. I think it's just we're watching how it's maybe widening the opportunities, if you will. Lear has been on an innovation and technology journey for the past several years. Our CEO is very committed to it, and we established back in January of 2019 our Lear Innovation Ventures effort, where we do a lot of work with with startups through ecosystems like Plug and Play, direct equity investments in venture funds, partnerships, etc. And I would say that through that activity, as well as internal investment, we've started to look at, I'd say, two angles for innovation, maybe three angles for innovation. Really, it's product innovation, process innovation, and business model innovation. And so business model innovation, that's an easy one to address. It's basically looking at different ways to monetize technology, whether it's software as a service, recurring revenue streams, or low capital intensity type opportunities, different ways to look at the industry from a business model perspective. And you asked about upskilling and reskilling and things like that. If I think about Industry 4.0, a lot of automation in our plants become touchless, right? So I think now that becomes even more relevant. If we can, have less human physical interaction with manufacturing, that I think is going to be a welcome change, and I believe that our employees are going to appreciate that more. And then in terms of product, I talked about some of those things, that we were already on a journey towards with connectivity, touchless or contactless transactions. How do we make, I like to say, how do we make the user experience in the car delightful? Because today it frankly it isn't, right? There's too many technologies competing and not sort of a cohesive user interface or user experience. And we think that applies, from cleanliness and hygiene all the way up through how do we live our lives and use our vehicles, whether that's your own personal one or a shared one. So I think that, again, back to the first initial question, this is not the driving force of the change. This is just another opportunity to take a step back and recognize the value of some of the things that we've been talking about and looking at across the trends in the industry.
That's fantastic. And Hakan, is that a mindset shift? This seems like a whole new sort of focus around, what's important in automotive as we think about the innovation agenda.
Now, we are a product-driven company. Right? We're not making money from artificial intelligence, digitalization, AI services, etc. We're making money from our products. And we need to keep our product leadership for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles, wherever the market moves, in all of them. Now, digitalization, machine learning, artificial intelligence, these are tools for us to use. So we're a user of these tools to perfect our products. I'll give you some examples. We're using cutting-edge technology in our even conventional products. Dual clutch transmission systems. We've been in production for decades. Now, in dual clutch transmissions, you use friction plates that use a special paper material. It's a disc like this. It's covered with paper. You can just look at it and say, oh, it's a funny looking disc with a bunch of paper attached to it. What's so special about it? I think this is probably the most number of patents and PhDs we have working on, because we're using artificial intelligence, 3D imaging on the production line of every single plate with infinite number of geometries on that friction surface with different type of paper materials. And the tools that we have developed in Ketch, Germany with the team are basically continuously improving our processes and making our products better and better. You don't want to hear any rattling from your clutch or dual clutch system when you're driving. It's pretty annoying.
I prefer not.
But can you imagine, even in those conventional products, there is machine learning behind and there is 3D imaging behind. So these are some examples. Even if you're not in digital space, you're not in artificial intelligence or machine learning business, you need to be aware and you need to apply these to make your technology, your products better. Otherwise, you're going to be behind. Somebody else is going to do it. In terms of digitalization, in terms of using virtual meetings like this, I think COVID-19 situation just made us realize that this could be normal. Like John, I used to be on air traveling pretty much 75% of my time, 3 weeks out of the month. I was on the road. Asia, Europe, US, nonstop. And we've been grounded the last couple of months. And we can still work, we can still operate. And actually in some areas, even better, because now we don't have to travel, we have more time. I start my day typically around 7:30, get up to speed, get my coffee, get on my meetings, and until 5, 6, with some coffee breaks here and there and breaks with the kids, play outside of it if the weather is okay and not snowing in Michigan. This is becoming our new norm. And
Yeah.
even if we don't come back to the office for another couple of weeks with our office employees, I think we'll manage this. And some of this will stick, because some of this, less travel and more virtual meetings, I think it's going to connect us more.
Yeah.
And I think some of that will stick and become the new norm, with or without COVID. And I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, I know Saeed's been quite happy to see us all working harder than ever. And look, we've had a few questions just as we get to near the top of the hour about the ecosystem. And John, maybe you could talk about. I'm curious about what's unique about that ecosystem. What do you think? What are you excited about? What sort of technologies do you think within that ecosystem are the most exciting?
So that ecosystem, just to make sure you're talking about mobility ecosystem or startup
yes,
ecosystem.
Startup mobility.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I'm excited by the magnitude of it. Still, it's been, I would say, the past 8 years, maybe roughly the past 7-8 years. It's just been a cadence of an accelerating cadence of ideas and entrepreneurs and people willing to jump up and take the risk and start their own companies and bring their smart ideas to the table. And that to me is extremely exciting. Like I said, I've worked my whole career on the trends that are now finally becoming a reality. And part of the reason they're becoming a reality is because, smart folks from around the world are bringing their ideas and their brains to this industry. And, the activity, in my opinion, hasn't slowed down as a result of COVID. It's just somewhat changing, and maybe expectations are changing, and priorities are changing. But that's okay. I don't see any change in magnitude or speed of innovation. And in fact, I think innovation during this time is more important than ever. I've come to recognize that there is innovation in absolutely everything that we do in our personal lives and in our work. So, I mean, like Hakan mentioned about using things like AI and machine learning behind the scenes that most people don't even recognize. And so some of the startups that are now coming into process oriented areas with automation or with analysis tools, data analytics, et cetera, looking at how we're leveraging other industries in the mobility space from mobile, from IT, et cetera. All that to me is extremely compelling and exciting. And I think it's about time. And I think it's about time that we see the user experience in the car become delightful, like I talked about.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we've got time for one more question. Saeed, do you have one thing that you'd like to finish with?
And again, I really am excited to hear your positive outlook. I like, similar to you, we have 10 offices in China, and I have not seen enthusiasm. Like, as you said, they came back and they are stronger. And last week I talked to our Milan office in Italy, and it was like, I kind of said, am I talking to China or am I talking to Italy? Because Italy was hit hard, but the outlook is so bright. And I'm just counting the days that we would have the same time as China or Italy here. And maybe we'll finish by, can we make Detroit great again?
Detroit is already great. It's getting better.
No. In fact, like, I spent at least 5 trips in Detroit, and it's a really, I think there is some underlying positive energy. And again, I also work in Cleveland. I would love these cities to be sort of super exciting. Maybe we can finish with your thoughts about Detroit.
Hakan, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I think I'm the only one from Detroit on the panel, so I can get started. Well, Detroit has gone through an amazing transformation. I've been living in the area for about 20 years now, and it's really incredible. I think Detroit is really on the way to become a new hotspot for innovations and incubators and startups, and we're really excited about it because we hear all the time, right? Detroit is the heartland of automotive. This is what we do in Michigan. This is our core business. And we always hear disruption coming from Silicon Valley, disruption coming from China, disruption from all around the world. And we're in a position, hey, we don't want to be disrupted. We want to be the one disrupting. And we have the heritage of mobility, and we know how to manufacture cars for a century, more than a century. And if somebody's going to disrupt and rewrite the e-mobility story, we should be the ones doing that. Together with, of course, everybody else, but we don't want to be behind. So I really appreciate the fact that finally, after our first introduction about 2.5 years ago, Said, you're coming to Detroit, you're working with us, bringing the startup ecosystem to Detroit. It's really exciting. I'm happy you made that decision, and we're really looking forward to being a part of it.
John?
Yeah, so similar to Hakan, you know, Detroit and what you said, Saeed, I agree. There's an underlying energy in Detroit, and I think a lot of that stems from, you know, 100+ years of innovating mobility, and so this is a time for Detroit to shine more than ever before, and I'm excited to see as we come back to the new normal, what ecosystem evolves and how it develops, and I'm very excited that Plug and Play is coming to town. So. You know, all good things for Detroit. I think, you know, I think it's innovation versus everybody. And if we can team up with Silicon Valley, Tel Aviv, you know, Berlin, Stuttgart, Shanghai, and Detroit all together, that's what's going to be very powerful. So, yeah, I'm excited about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. And I very much look forward to getting together and seeing you guys across the table instead of across the Zoom.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Turn it back to Adam. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. Adam, you've got the ball.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for the discussion. I just want to say thank you again to John at Lear and Hakan at BorgWarner. Really incredible discussion. I wish we had more time. I know there was quite a few questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. But, you know, in any case, absolutely loved having you guys here. Just quickly, kind of for the rest of the audience, we do have a couple of upcoming events, which I've listed here. The first one is cost-saving technology for industry. It's the third part in a 3-part series talking about, you know, different cost-saving technologies. This one in particular is on data, and we'll have Wesco being our keynote speaker for that, followed by several different startups. And secondly, we have an energy event on the 15th, innovations in renewable energy. So that one has Google actually as the keynote speaker, followed also by startups. There are a number of other events. They're all on our website. At the top right, you see there, plugandplay.techcenter.com, pfptc.com/events. I would encourage anybody who's interested in seeing anything like today's event, the CXO Roundtable, or these two, or really any others in the future, to go visit that website. Finally, you know, I just want to say thank you to everyone who had a chance to join us today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either myself at adam@pmptc.com or Simon, of course, at simon@pmptc.com. We're more than happy to talk to you guys about Plug and Play Detroit and opportunities to partner there, the End COVID-19 initiative, any deal flows or trial deal flows for anybody who's considering partnering with us, different startup technologies that are out there, just to kind of give you a feel for the landscape, upcoming events, or really anything else you'd like to talk about. So with that, I know we've actually gone a few minutes over. So, you know, thank you once again. And, you know, I hope to talk to some of you soon.